Well, hi and good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending where you are. My name is Neil Griffiths, and I'll be presenting the iPass Q1 product update today. During this webinar, we're going to be talking about all the great new stuff that we've launched during in Q1 of this year. We'll be looking back a little bit into 2016 to talk about some of the stuff that we released at the back end of 2016. This webinar series is kind of a reboot of a webinar series that we used to do a little while ago, where we gave quarterly updates out to all our customers, partners, and prospects around all the stuff we've delivered and all the stuff we were working on. We are, as I say, we're rebooting those webinars, so you'll expect to see a regular cadence of these product updates coming out through 2017. In terms of agenda, what I'd like to cover today is the introduction. I think we just did that. We'd like to talk a little bit about iPass product strategy for the newer folks on the call. Talk a little bit about the iPass product stack, again, for the newer people on the call. And then I want to talk about some of the recent focus areas where we've been putting a lot of effort into enhancing the product and the service. We're not going to go into a huge amount of detail around the stuff that we've actually delivered during this quarter, because we've delivered a tremendous amount. So we're really going to pick a few key focus areas and talk about what we believe are really significant deliverables that we've brought to bear this quarter. And then actually, towards the end of the presentation, we're going to give you a little sneak peek of the stuff we've got coming up in the next quarter, and actually ask for your input and feedback on some of those things that we're developing. And we've saved a little bit of time at the end for Q&A to mop up any outstanding questions that we've got. If you'd like to ask any questions as we go through the webinar, you should have access to a Q&A window within your browser or your client. Excuse me. Please feel free to ask any questions there, and we'll address those as we go through our presentation today. So on with the presentation. All right. So a little bit about iPass for the folks on the call that are new to iPass. So we are the global mobile connectivity leader. We provide service in over 120 countries on 160 plus partner networks, and our footprint extends to over 60 million hotspots as of today. The footprint is rapidly increasing. We'll show you some of the growth over the past couple of years in a future slide, and that growth is continuing to accelerate. We have a tremendous depth and breadth of footprint, including everything from aircraft, hotels and hospitality, airports, every kind of bar, coffee shop, and restaurant that you can possibly imagine. We're effectively everywhere that users need to be. And as I say, the footprint is rapidly expanding. The iPass service is actually delivered in a very simple to understand and simple to consume way. Effectively, we sell our services on an unlimited subscription plan, and we try to make the service as it's consumed by users as invisible as possible. And you'll see some of the stuff that we're doing in terms of how we connect users to the network and how we curate footprint in our network, and the big strides that we're making in terms of improving connection success really kind of bear out that story, that we really try to make iPass as a service completely invisible to our users, very easy to consume. We don't restrict the number of devices, we don't restrict the amount of usage that an individual user can consume. A key part of our product strategy is our big data platform. We use this big data platform to curate and operationalize the network. We'll talk about how we do that in the next few slides. We've made some huge strides over the past 6 months in terms of how we take the data that we collect from our users and how they consume the service and how they move around to really optimize the service and optimize the user experience. And essentially, what the platform allows our partners and our customers to do is to take the service to where their users are and have the users consume the service in a very simple and easy, transparent way. iPass is well known for Wi-Fi, and we like to think we're a Wi-Fi first company, but we're not Wi-Fi only. You'll see as we go through this presentation that we're really starting to think about the future and think about the future user experience, where you may have a user that's transitioning between different modalities in terms of connections, and is consuming different applications, and those applications have different bandwidth and quality of experience needs. And you'll see how we're making, I think, huge strides in terms of being able to direct users and automatically correct users to the right access infrastructure or the right connection medium at that time to service the application that they're consuming on their device. And lastly, a really key component in our product strategy is our SDK program and our developer program in general. We really see this as the way that iPass is going to be on a billion devices in very short order. And the SDK allows customers and partners to take the iPass technology and integrate it into their applications that are running on their own users' devices. And we're seeing tremendous uptake from our MNO, cellular operator partners, our MVNO and MVNE customers are really jumping onto this capability and are integrating iPass services into their clients to do a number of diverse different applications, including out-of-area roaming and data offload and spectrum recovery, and a whole bunch of different applications that reduce operational margin, but also represent an opportunity to generate more ARPU for the users by offering innovative services. We're also seeing strong uptake from kind of third-party over-the-top app developers, people who are delivering audio media content, unified communication applications, those type of applications. Those folks are really starting to examine our SDK as a way to making their applications more usable and take concerns about bandwidth consumption off the table as far as their users are concerned. We'll talk more about the SDK, what we're doing with it, and where we're going with it as we move through this presentation. But the SDK in general is really key to what we see as the explosive growth of iPass over the next year or so, where we're going to effectively, pretty close to be on 1 billion devices within around a year or so. So the iPass technology stack or product stack is really based on 3 components. There's the iPass SmartConnect Wi-Fi service, which we talked a little bit about. It's delivered across 60 million hotspots through close to 200 different partners. And it's pretty much everywhere users need to be, in-flight airports, hotels, trains, buses, you name it. The service can be consumed either via the native iPass client or via the SDK components, which we're going to go into a little bit more detail quite soon. And that really allows a developer or a customer or partner to fine-tune the user experience for their application and their user profile. And the final key component of the product stack is the big data and analytics capability, which really allows us to operationalize the network and really optimize the user experience for every user that's connecting iPass. And is also now starting to become a platform on which we're starting to think about building other applications, including some very interesting applications around IoT, and also some big data and analytics solutions around understanding user behavior and potentially some possible kind of ad tech and fintech type applications in the longer term. We'll touch on that as we go through this presentation. So to get into the specifics about what we wanted to talk about with regard to the updates today, there were kind of 5 broad areas that I wanted to cover. Footprint, how we're expanding our footprint and how we're going broader and deeper. User experience, and talk about some specific initiatives that we've had around optimizing the user experience. We'll spend a little bit of time about security. We've put a tremendous amount of effort and focus into security, and that will continue on an ongoing basis. We'll talk about SDK, what we've done, what we're going to be doing in the near term, and what we see as the long-term future for the SDK. And then we'll touch on Veri-Fi and the big data and analytics products towards the end of this presentation. So let's talk about footprint. So, we've seen over 2,000% network growth in 3 years. So, from 2.2 million hotspots in 2014 to well over 60 million in 2017. Now, those 60 million are the 60 million hotspots that we see in our that we advertise as being in our footprint. The number of hotspots that we actually see as we kind of doing our data collection exercises that are driven out from our clients and our SDKs is probably north of 110 million. And we'll talk a little bit later on about what we do with that kind of excess data and how we understand what the next pieces of footprint or the next pieces of infrastructure are that we'd like to bring in our network by leveraging that data. We'll talk about that in the next couple of slides. But take away from this slide is explosive growth in our footprint. We can see this growth continuing pretty much indefinitely into the future. In general, across on a global basis, across all the types of footprint that we have. Where we do have special focus right now is in the areas of in-flight and hospitality, because we're seeing tremendous demand from our customers to really provide a simplified and a streamlined service for the mobile users that are traveling on business. So we have a tremendous focus on in-flight. So we've added around about 1,400 aircraft into our footprint since Q1 of 2016. The big news over the last quarter or so, if you've been tracking our press releases, is that we signed United Airlines. So probably around beginning of Q2, we're going to start onboarding those aircraft, and we'll have a steady ramp of bringing on all 700 plus United aircraft throughout 2017. So that's a huge chunk of additional footprint that we have there. Again, we're bringing on Panasonic Avionics and a number of other providers that are going to bring quite a few additional airlines, including Air Berlin, ANA, and WestJet. And we'll continue to bring on more and more in-flight providers during 2017. And even at a conservative estimate, by the end of 2017, we're going to have about 3,400 plus aircraft out of the global fleet will be enabled with iPass Wi-Fi. And that means for your users, if you're subscribed to our in-flight plans, our unlimited in-flight plans, you can actually have your users step onto any of those aircraft at any time, open up their device. iPass will just automatically connect to that footprint within that aircraft. We'll talk a little bit in the next slide about how we're really working on optimizing that user experience within in-flight. That's been a high focus effort for us over the past quarter. Obviously, to key into the business traveler story, we're also spending a lot of time adding more hotels and hospitality. So we've added around 1,500 hotels worldwide in 2016, including the ones that you can see in this slide, which is giving us more coverage in key areas in Russia and in Mexico. My colleague Steve Nam, in a couple of weeks, will be doing a webinar that goes into a lot more detail around our network acquisition plans and where we're going to next and what we're up to. This is just kind of highlights of what we've been doing in the last quarter. And Steve can tell you where we're going to, in terms of our next focus areas. And I don't want to steal his thunder, but you'll see him probably talking a good deal about Australia, India, and Singapore as three target markets for us. But I won't steal Steve's thunder. Sign up for his webinar, and he'll take you through the full story around what we'll do there. So let's move on to talk about user experience and how we've been working on improving the user experience for people who are connecting using iPass over the last quarter. Actually, this is more like the last 6 months. So the way that iPass used to work was kind of static. We relied on kind of directories that were pushed to the clients, and there were quite big data files, and we got a lot of pushback from users that there were big chunks of data that weren't updated terribly often. So we've, over the past, probably about the past year, but really the pace has really picked up over the last 6 months. We've kind of really re-architected the way that iPass works under the hood, and it's been a pretty remarkable chunk of development, because it's kind of like changing the wheels on a car going down the freeway at 70 miles an hour, and nobody notices. But we've really fundamentally changed the way that iPass works. In the way that a client works now is it does have a limited set of directories to operate on in a fallback condition, but in most cases, when the client wakes up on a device, it sends its location to our big data platform. Now, our big data platform has previously ingested and curated and collated all the locations of all the 60 million hotspots that we know globally around the world, and then can serve those back in a ranked order back to the client based on not just the distance to that hotspot, but also other parameters like the throughput, the bandwidth, how long that hotspot has been available. There's about 5 or 6 different parameters that we weigh through an algorithm to rank hotspots based on what we think is their quality at that particular moment. And these rankings are actually updated in real time based on data that we see from users actually using the service and running around in all these different places around the world. So what we're able to do now with SmartConnect version 2 is really optimize the user experience so that we're always delivering the user to the optimum hotspot for both their location and how they actually want to consume the service. And all of this is driven from our big data Veri-Fi platform, which is constantly ingesting terabytes of information from our clients as they move around the world and understanding where hotspots are, which ones are iPass hotspots, which hotspots we could ingest into the network as potential new footprint. And this process is kind of going on continuously 24/7 and is all then processed and fed back to the users so that they just connect to the best hotspot at that moment every time they fire up the iPass application, whether they're on an aircraft or in a hotel or on a bus or a train. So one of the things we've been doing, one of the very latest release to iPass SmartConnect is a change to the way that we actually locate hotspots in space. Because obviously if we're going to tell you, okay, all these hotspots are around you, this is the best one to connect to, or we're going to let the client kind of do it itself, you kind of have to really know where the client is and really know where the hotspot is to make sure you're connecting to the correct hotspot. So over the past few weeks, over the past few quarters, really, we've been fine-tuning these algorithms, and this is the result that we're seeing from the changes that we made about 3 or 4 weeks ago. This is a map to the right of this slide, is a map of San Francisco Airport. This shows all the San Francisco free airport Wi-Fi hotspots within San Francisco, and you can see that they are incredibly precise. And if somebody lights up a device at the that top left of where that pier is, that point sticks out to the top left there, we can direct them to, or their client, without them even knowing, to connect to that hotspot at that particular spot at that particular time with very high order of certainty that they're going to get an excellent user experience, because we've been monitoring that hotspot and we've measured performance of that hotspot as other people have connected to it over a period of time. And all that gets flowed into this ranking scheme that we've got that ranks every single hotspot in our 60 million in terms of its quality and its availability and, as I say, 5 or 6 other parameters. What we're also doing a very good job of these days is actually excluding footprint. It's all very well connecting people to footprint when it's available, but Wi-Fi networks are very fluid, especially airport Wi-Fi networks. Because I don't know about you folks, but every airport that I've been in is pretty much a construction site with a runway attached, and hotspots disappear and reappear and get unplugged and moved. So we're constantly scanning all of the footprint that we know about to actually understand what's available. And if something disappears or the internet connection out the back of that hotspot kind of falls off and you can't actually get to the internet on it anymore, we will detect that inside of 8 minutes and actually blacklist that particular chunk of footprint or that particular access point out of the network until we see it actually come back in. And then we'll reintroduce it back into the footprint and make it available for users again. We've also done a lot of work scrubbing our database of 60 million hotspots to include a lot of random names that you see out there that can confuse kind of connection algorithms, like generic stuff like Android and iPhone, and printer and Linksys, and all these goofy names that people give to APs. We've scrubbed a lot of that stuff out there to make sure that we're not mistakenly connecting to a chunk of infrastructure that doesn't actually go anywhere or we can't access. And that exercise is also tied into the big strides we've made in terms of security, which we'll talk about in the next couple of 3 slides as we back. So takeaway from these slides is that we're really starting to leverage and understand the benefits of big data within our platform now, and we're constantly analyzing both real-time data coming from the clients to understand where footprint is and how to curate it and how to control it and how to direct users to the optimum hotspot to connect to and how to manage that whole connection experience. And we're also looking at failures very closely by having automated log collection. So, if we see persistent errors or issues, we'll go and investigate and put focus effort on those particular issues, while we're letting the kind of big data machine kind of run the rest of the platform. And it's been quite remarkable, the change to connection rates that we've seen as we've introduced this technology over the past quarter or so. We've seen across the board, and it varies by where you are in the world and the quality of the underlying infrastructure, but we've seen in general about a 25% connection success improvement, which is pretty substantial. If you were thinking about a connection success rate of maybe 60%, you're up to 85% in some locations right now, which is when you take out user error and batteries dying and stuff like that, is pretty much as good as you can get out of a Wi-Fi type connection. So huge amount of emphasis over the past quarter on really driving connection success improvement. And then we'll talk about this a little bit as we get towards the end of this presentation. You'll see some really advanced stuff that we're starting to do around understanding how users are moving. By moving, I mean physically moving. Are they walking? Are they driving? Are they riding a bicycle? Believe it or not, we can actually track that. And then we, driving the client and the connection algorithms to tailor their behavior to whatever that user is doing at that particular time, or whatever application they're consuming on their device. Some really interesting stuff coming in the next quarter around that. So moving on. So in-flight, we talked a little bit about in-flight. Another key focus area for user experience improvement during Q1 was in-flight. We have a new in-flight GoGo implementation. It's a very seamless user experience. It leverages a GoGo API. So now the iPass client will automatically connect to GoGo, and we've seen connection success go from the kind of low to mid 50% with GoGo up above 85%, which is really excellent. And this, candidly, this has been driven by some of our larger enterprise customers who really love the in-flight service but want to make it absolutely seamless for their users. So we've been putting a lot of effort into that. And the learnings that we've got from the GoGo implementation, we're going to apply to all the other in-flight implementations that we're either working on or seeking to optimize. So the United implementation will leverage a bunch of the stuff that we've actually learned from the GoGo implementation. So we're going to come out of the gate with very high connection success numbers for that implementation. So, so we talked a little bit about enhancing the user experience with big data and optimizing the connection experience. Let's go on to talk about security. So security is a really interesting field, and one of the challenges that when you're running this type of platform or this type of network is it's a never-ending battle, because there are continuously evolving new threats and new vulnerabilities that people are seeking to expose. And we've put a tremendous amount of effort in over the past couple of quarters in really figuring out a way to deflect and block all these attacks, but also try and get a couple of steps ahead of these attackers and put stuff into the platform and into the clients and I mean in terms of our operational approaches to try and head off and deflect any kind of future attacks. So we've done a ton of stuff, and I'm just going to go through in these next couple of slides some of the items that we've done. So we talked a little bit earlier on about detecting and blacklisting rogue or malicious hotspots. Sometimes hotspots break, and sometimes the internet falls out the back of them, and sometimes people switch them off. But sometimes they are rogue and malicious hotspots that people are setting up to try and attract users by spoofing another valid free hotspot and trying to get the user to connect to it in the hope that they may enter some credentials that they can hijack for phishing attacks, or even hijack user content once the user's connected. So we've done a lot of work in terms of being able to detect and blacklist rogue and malicious hotspots. I won't go into a lot of detail about how we do it, because that would be kind of giving the game away. But we have some very clever algorithms for detecting when hotspots are rogue, man in the middle attacks. Platform validation. You know, one of the things that would seem to be an emerging attack vector for services is that, you know, trying to spoof an entire platform. So you can fool a client into thinking it's connected to the platform that it thought it was connecting to, but it's not. It's connected to a chunk of malicious software that then scoops up all your data and all your user credentials. So we're putting a lot of work into doing platform validation so that the client always knows that it's talking to iPass cloud, and the iPass cloud always knows that it's talking to the client. Nobody can get in the middle of that dialogue and hijack credentials or hijack user data. And part of that is you know, really thinking about how we do authentication and doing multi-level and multi-factor authentication. I won't go into the difference between those two, but they're both being implemented to deflect these man-in-the-middle attacks. We're also taking a kind of root and branch look at how we move data around and where data sits on the client, where it sits in the platform. So a lot of work has gone into encrypting all data at rest on the client and all data at rest on the platform, and then making sure that we're using strong encryption for any data that moves around between the client and the platform. Again, all in with the intent of blocking any malicious attacks. We're also looking at a lot of user policy control, how we control users accessing the network, and you know, how we push them off the network and stop them using the network when we believe there may be an issue or a security threat in their area. We're doing a bunch of research around, you know, alerting users to say, hey, you're in an area where there's a bunch of rogue or malicious hotspots. You know, maybe you're using Wi-Fi, you're using iPass now, and it's secure, but be aware that this is going on around the area. So, you know, be careful about not using iPass and just using your generic connection manager in your device to connect to Wi-Fi, because there are bad actors in this area. Also, we're continuously optimizing the hardening of the client and the cloud infrastructure, and running continuous penetration testing to make sure that we're not accidentally opening up any attack vectors. So, you know, we're looking at the whole platform as an attack surface, and we're continuously trying to kind of break into it ourselves. And obviously, you know, so that we're not having to fix things after the fact, we've implemented secure development best practices. So as we write stuff, you know, first order of business is we threat model, and then we design, and then we code, and then we do static code analysis to make sure we've not introduced any vulnerabilities, and then we do fuzz testing to try and break the code. So we're putting very hard and robust code into production, which is hopefully means that, you know, the penetration testing as it goes on doesn't find anything within the network. And all this is centered around making iPass, you know, a trusted communication tool, a trusted tool that users don't have to think about because it's invisible, and don't have to worry about because we know that iPass is taking care of all the security and is protecting their data on the back end. Another feature that we've had in the product for a little while, we're not doing a very good job of talking about it, is our last mile VPN offer. This is an optional and free capability that you can switch on within the iPass service, and it provides last mile VPN encryption to protect user data coming from their device all the way into the iPass infrastructure. And these services are generally paid services that you have to buy as an add-on, but it's actually included within the iPass service, and you can switch it on and off as a user, although we tend to recommend that you always leave it switched on. All right, so that's security. Ton of stuff going on in security. You know, driven out of the fact that we're going to be on 1 billion devices and have some very large enterprise users and very large partners and very large MVNOs and MNOs on our platform. Or we have now, actually. And one tiny security flaw in anything that we do would have a massive impact on our users and on our partners and customers, just because of the scale that we're operating at now and the scale that we're going to be operating in the future. So we're really looking to get ahead of the security issues and design stuff into the products and into the platform to make sure that we don't have issues in the future. All right, we talked a little bit about SDK previously, so let's just refresh on what the SDK is. So the SDK is a suite of software development tools and libraries and code snippets and documentation, and it's a complete package of stuff that allows a developer to come along and integrate the iPass connection management, authorization, provisioning, and the whole kind of consumption of the iPass service into their application. And it's really interesting, the range of applications that are being investigated to integrate iPass. We've done a lot of work of late with network operators and MVNOs, where they're looking to implement things like Wi-Fi or data offload via Wi-Fi, to recover margin and improve spectrum usage in busy places, and also to enable new kind of ARPU generating applications like out of area roaming or international roaming, that kind of stuff. Really fascinating space in its own right, and iPass and the SDK is really bringing some really significant benefits to folks in that space. We are starting to see another kind of trend emerging where we're starting to see kind of over-the-top applications wanting to integrate Wi-Fi, and that's not to provide a kind of a service, a connectivity service. That's to make their app work better and to take concerns about data consumption on mobile devices off the table as far as the users are concerned. So we're starting to see content delivery firms, unified communication companies, even some big enterprises are coming to us now and saying, hey, can we use this SDK to make our app run better, make it more secure, improve connection success, make sure our users are always online and always consuming our service? And the answer is yes. The SDK it leverages all the great security and connection management stuff that we've talked about previously. And you can embed that in your application to make sure that your app can always be connected. Your users are not worrying about data caps and bill shock around that stuff. And it's kind of invisible and always there and totally secure. And that. Oh, apologies for that. My other phone line dropped. So, watch now, I was dialed in on another phone. So yes, so we're seeing a lot of uptake from over-the-top application developers who are really interested in integrating iPass into their applications to take advantage of seamless global connectivity. So what's new in the iPass SDK? Well, we're a little bit short of time, so I don't actually want to go into a lot of specifics around bits and bytes. We can do deep dives in future webinars around the new features. Suffice to say that the new iPass clients actually use the SDK core. So when we deliver new features around security, improved connection management, all the good stuff that I talked about earlier on, in the iPass client, that actually shows up in the SDK components and is available to our partners and our developers actually before we iPass release our native client. So we have a very honest and upfront approach around working with our partners and developers in terms of making sure that they've got access to new features at the same time as people that are consuming the native iPass client. And recent examples of that are the kind of curation and iPass SmartConnect enhancements that I talked about earlier, and all the security patches and enhancements. Okay, so moving on. So one thing that we've actually brought to market over the past few weeks that's related to the SDK is a new feature. It's a location services API. Many people that choose to integrate iPass also look to integrate a hotspot finder or a mapping application so that their users can actually find iPass hotspot footprint and actually connect it. But as an application, it's maybe something that's not going to be required in the not too distant future, because we have so much coverage and so much footprint that people aren't going to have to kind of hunt for footprint. It's just always going to be there. But right now, in certain parts of the world, people like to see a location map and a hotspot finder. So we've actually made available our location database via an SDK, which can be consumed by our MVNO and MNO customers, so that they can build their own hotspot finder and mapping applications so that they can actually understand where the footprint is. The API is actually highly intelligent in that it actually understands the footprint that a particular customer or partner may be purchasing from iPass, because not all customers choose to consume all the footprint globally. So the API can actually understand, okay, you've got this stuff in this area, so we're going to present to your users these locations. It allows an MVNO and MNO to very easily construct a hotspot finder type application. We'll show you what that looks like in a couple of future slides. When we talk about the sneak peek and the stuff that's coming up, you'll see that we're enhancing this to include a bunch more tools for MNOs and MVNOs to integrate location information into their application, so allowing them to direct their users to the nearest iPass footprint. Quick word on Veri-Fi, our big data and analytics platform. So during Q2, we're going to be announcing Veri-Fi kind of as a product, almost as a standalone product, and that's going to take two forms. The first one will be for operators, perhaps MNOs and MVNOs and the very large enterprises. They'll be able to collect and leverage global usage information and QoS and location information on their users and how their users are moving around. And they're going to be able to use this to build dashboards to understand connection management success, how and where their users are consuming cellular versus Wi-Fi, what the mix is, how users are transitioning backwards and forwards between Wi-Fi and cellular, and really understand how the network is performing and how they may choose to optimize the network in the future. Another Veri-Fi offering that we plan to make available during Q2 is really going to kind of start to leverage what we know about where hotspots are and where users are to start to do some quite innovative applications that are perhaps less to do about connection management and Wi-Fi, but more about kind of user and people behavior. So we'll be able to look at things like measure footfall traffic into a venue, say into a hotel or into an airport terminal. We will be able to understand how and where users move around. And long term, it's going to open up some interesting applications for iPass around the areas of ad tech and fintech applications where people that want to place impressions on devices need to understand where users are going and which venues they're visiting. So some very interesting stuff coming out that's going to add on to the value of our Wi-Fi capability over the next quarter, and certainly an interesting time to be at iPass as all this stuff is rolling out. So portal, no product update will be complete about talking about the portal and the management platform. A lot of focus in here around reporting and understanding how to onboard large numbers of users. Because we're working with a lot of MNOs, MVNOs, and large global enterprises right now, as well as OEMs like HP and a few others that are coming online. We're deploying tens of thousands of users out to these folks. So we need to have very accurate reporting that can inform the admins for these deployments around how the deployments are going, how long it takes somebody to connect successfully for the first time, are people falling off the service, how much are people consuming the service, all deployment status and onboarding is a really key thing to provide a lot of telemetry for these big deployments, because you want to understand early if everything's going okay, or are the wheels coming off, or do you need to optimize the onboarding experience. Also going forward, connection activity reports, you want to make sure that users are still continuing to consume the service and enjoy it. So we're enhancing our connection activity reports to include a lot more detail and simplify the reports as well at the same time, so you can get a really clear view of what users are up to. And then coming up in the next release, we're going to be making some enhancements for voucher programs and improving how we do user tracking and call detail records for single sign-on customers, because that's something we've been a little bit lacking in the past. So we're going to make that enhancement and really actually put in the next release of the portal in about 2 weeks. Okay, so that's kind of what we've been doing during Q1 and looking back a little bit into 2016. What I wanted to do now is just to spend a few minutes giving you a sneak peek of some of the stuff we've got coming up in Q2 and then a little bit further out maybe into Q3. So the first thing I wanted to show you all is a new user interface. So we are working on this right now. This is in the design and prototyping stage. What you're seeing right now might change a little bit. But in general, this is what it looks like. It's going to be a clean, fresh, lightweight new design. We're going to make the app a deal less chatty than it is now, because we have had some complaints that the app can be a little bit chatty. So we're seeking to clarify and simplify how we present data to users, only show the most applicable stuff at that moment, and we're really thinking about context. And we're making some big changes also into the hotspot finder and the mapping application, which you can see some screenshots of in this slide. The cool thing here is that we're actually making these user interface components and libraries actually available as part of the SDK. So as well as having the location services API to query us to figure out where hotspots are, partners are now going to be able to take these interface libraries and actually build them into their apps. And that's just going to speed the whole process of integrating iPass into a new application that you might want to deploy. And actually, these user interface components and libraries are actually going to be available a little bit before we actually launch our new kind of native client. So that just speaks to our commitment to making sure our partners are being well served here. So this is the new UX. If you'd like to give us input on this, we're probably going to be putting a call out to solicit feedback and have people do alpha and beta trials. If you're interested in that, please reach out. We'd love to hear from you and get your feedback. So that's the new UX. That's coming along pretty soon, probably May of this year. I would have thought, maybe a little bit later. We want to get it right, so we're not going to rush it out. So it might be into June, but that's definitely coming this year. So what else? So iPass SDK innovations. So we talked a little bit earlier on about some really advanced stuff that we're doing around understanding user behavior and understanding when to transition people from hop on to hop off. I'm sorry, hop on to hop off. It's the transition from cellular to Wi-Fi. As I said earlier on, iPass is all about kind of Wi-Fi first, but not Wi-Fi only. So we're really thinking about the entire connection experience, the entire user experience. And we're really thinking about how and when we transition people from the cellular bearer to the Wi-Fi bearer, and maybe even to a third bearer. We're looking at all kinds of factors and parameters right now, including motion detection. Are you moving? Are you in a car? Are you walking? How does that affect the connection handoff algorithm? We're even starting to look at monitoring interfaces. So we're going to look at interfaces to understand, are you in a web conference? Are you in a phone call, a VoIP call? Are you streaming a movie? And depending on what you're doing at that moment, we may hold off in transitioning, say, from cellular to Wi-Fi, because we don't want to break the connection and change the IP address and have everything stop and kind of restart again. We're also doing that. We're also looking to do that based on location. So if you're on a campus, we're not hopping between Wi-Fi in different buildings all the time and disrupting the connection. So a lot of stuff going on around connection management and user experience within the next few SDK releases. The next major release for SDK would incorporate some or all of the stuff that you can see here. And within the next 2 months, we're going to be releasing the user experience library components to allow partners to build a hotspot finder. So they're going to get a head start on building their own hotspot finder applications. And then in about month to 6 weeks or so, we're actually going to be launching a developer portal where all of this stuff for the SDK and the libraries and all the documentation and the community and the bulletin boards and the trouble ticketing system, all of that is going to be surfaced within a new developer portal, which is going to be up in probably about 6 weeks for the general population. So a lot of stuff going on the developer side and on the SDK side. We're trying to get to 1 billion devices. We're trying to cover the world with Wi-Fi. We see partners and developers, especially in our MNO and MVNO communities, as key to getting there. So we're putting a tremendous amount of focus into that area. But that's not at the expense of our enterprise customers. We're constantly improving the connection experience for those folks, and we'll be launching a new client and new user experience within the next few months to service that community. All right, that's pretty much the end of the slides that I wanted to cover. We have a little bit of time left over for Q&A. I'm just going to ask my my cohort Alex if he's still on. If we have any questions.
No questions in the Q&A at the moment.
Okay.
Give them a couple minutes to write in.
Very quiet gang today. So, Alex, I don't think we're going to get any questions. Not even Sean. Not even Sean from HP. He's a good friend of mine. Not like him to be quiet.
Yep.
All right. Well, if there's no more questions, Alex, I think we'll wrap it up for today. We'll see some of all of you at the next quarter's product update. Thanks very much for your time.